Behind the Basket, episode number 3 here. Thank you guys all so much for coming today and listening to me for however long you may be. If you guys don't know what we do here, basically this is just a podcast all about the NBA. We started off a couple episodes ago, predicting the NBA playoffs if they were going to, eventually happen. Obviously, all sports, everything is basically on pause right now. Nobody really knows what's going to be happening because of the goddamn coronavirus, but it sucks. It is what it is, but we're coping with it. So, we're just kind of doing some predictions. We did episode 1. We did the first round. Episode number 2, we did the conference semifinals for both the East and the West. Today, we are doing the conference finals. I'll give you guys a little bit, of a rundown of what we went over in the last episode. And also, I apologize. You guys have been asking for a face cam on this for a long time, even though I guess a lot of people have a hard concept understanding that a podcast doesn't have a face cam, but if you guys want it, I'll give it to you. It doesn't really matter to me. So if you guys are listening on Spotify, Apple Music, any other streaming service, obviously, I do prefer that. We'll probably only do 1 or 2 more episodes basically on here before, we kind of stop posting them on YouTube. So if you guys want constant updates on the podcast, make sure you go follow me on Twitter. It's at Massa_YT. Should be in the description of my YouTube video as well. So we take a look. Last round, I'm not going to really go in depth with these series too much. Also, again, I apologize if I'm looking at my computer. That's basically what I'm going to be doing the entire video. So if you guys really wanted to see me that bad, that's what it's going to be. It was the one-seeded Bucks, 4-seeded Miami Heat. I had the Bucks winning that one in 6. 2-seeded Toronto Raptors, 3-seeded Boston Celtics. I had Toronto in 7. 1-seeded Lakers, 5-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder, Lakers in 5. 2-seeded Clippers, 6-seeded Rockets, and I had the Clippers in 7. So those are my predictions. I'm not going to really go too much into them. If you guys want to know more about why I made the predictions that I did, make sure to go check out the video before this. I'd probably do that actually maybe right now just so you're not, totally lost in the dark. But yeah, obviously today it's going to be the Milwaukee Bucks and the Toronto Raptors, a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals and this year's Eastern Conference Finals, and then the 1-seeded Los Angeles Lakers taking on the 2-seeded LA Clippers here in the Western Conference Finals. So let's hop right into this episode. So if you guys don't know, basically how I do these is I'm going to kind of start with my NBA predictions, and then I typically, talk about something different. Like right now I've been talking a lot about quarantine life. Kind of like what I have going on, which again, not much, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. So other than that, let's just hop right into this. I'm going to try to go a little bit more in depth. I've been trying to do that ever since, the start of this, because obviously, when we're in the first round of the playoffs, there's 8 teams on both sides, 4 matchups on each side. I can't go exactly as in depth. It would just take way too long. So I try to keep these videos pretty much under an hour. We'll see what we can do with that today. So we take a look here at the Eastern Conference Finals. It's the 1-seeded Milwaukee Bucks and the 2-seeded Toronto Raptors, an obvious rematch of the last year's Eastern Conference Finals, which was a very, very good series, in my opinion. So, key players for the series, they've been the same throughout basically the entire, podcast. Every episode, they've been the same exact players, because I really don't think they're changing. It really doesn't. I mean, if you're gonna have a dominant player, he's probably gonna be your key player to the series. So, I mean, surprise, surprise, Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be my key player here for the Milwaukee Bucks. Currently averaging 30 points, almost 14 boards, 6 assists. And then we move on to the Toronto Raptors. Pascal Siakam, 23.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. So I look at those guys as kind of like the number ones for both teams. I don't really think there's much, argument. Obviously on Giannis' side, it's him basically. And then obviously Chris Middleton's an unbelievable number 2 option. Eric Bledsoe, Brook Lopez, guys like that. And then when you look more at the Raptors, obviously, they're a team with a ton of depth, and I think it kind of is clear that Pascal Siakam is kind of that number 1 guy now, that Kawhi Leonard obviously, departed last offseason for LA. I think Pascal Siakam is, proven a lot of people wrong, and he's kind of, become a star in this league per se. So those are my 2 key players. I look at some key questions now, and then just kind of give my insight on those a little bit as well. Can Milwaukee's role players, and I just kind of, went over a few role players here. Brook Lopez, Eric Bledsoe, Dante DiVincenzo, Wesley Matthews, kind of guys like that who aren't like a number 1, number 2, and then occasionally number 3, and then, so on and so forth. So hang around with Toronto's role players, Norman Powell, Serge Ibaka, OG Anunoby, Marcus Gasol, and so on, obviously. So can they hang with them? I kind of do like one key question per team, pertaining to if this team could potentially win this series. Kind of, you'll see it in a second. But so this one is obviously, kind of favored around Milwaukee. I could have just done another Giannis question, but I've done a lot of Giannis questions, and I thought, maybe that would be a little bit boring. So when we look at the Toronto Raptors, obviously, coming fresh off an NBA Finals win, or obviously an NBA Finals championship, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Their role players were such a huge part of that championship run, and I don't think that should go without being said. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard was the best player in the entire NBA Finals last year. I don't really think there's much discussing that. I mean, if he's not on that Toronto Raptors team, there's no way they're making it to the NBA Finals. There's just no way. I do not see that Toronto Raptors team beating the 76ers in the Eastern Conference semifinals and then going on to the Eastern Conference finals. And, I mean, he limited Giannis a lot, which obviously, I mean, there's only so much you can limit Giannis on. But, again, I'm not trying to stick on the past. But, like, Kawhi Leonard's obviously the key player in that series, key player in pretty much every series when he's on the team. And then when he leaves and departs for LA, which, again, nobody really thought he was going to stick around in Toronto for too long. He kind of came in, established himself, won a championship, and I'm sure he enjoyed his time a lot more than a lot of people were going to think he did. But he obviously ended up leaving for, to go team up with Paul George in LA. And you can, criticize him however you want for that. He ended up getting Toronto their first championship, which is cool, which is huge. But he's moved on. And Pascal Siakam has seemingly emerged. I think he had an unbelievable playoff run last year, which kind of, helped him, like, establish himself, I guess. And he was obviously, more of a number 2 option. I think actually Fred VanVleet, I would say, was kind of more the number 2 option for Toronto in that finals series. I mean, the dude was unbelievable. I think he got a couple finals MVP votes, and he probably should have got more. I mean, he was lights out in that NBA finals. But if their role players here can, kind of like stick around with Toronto's role players, them being Milwaukee, obviously, I think this is going to be a lot easier of a series for them. I mean, as I mentioned, like, Toronto's just such a deep roster. They obviously had a huge trade deadline last year, acquiring Marc Gasol. They shipped Jonas Valanciunas over to Memphis. I think it's just such a thing that if your role players don't play good, you're only as good as the guy next to you. So it's one of those things. If one guy sucks, then other guys start to suck, and it's all going to fall apart before you know it. Giannis has 45 points and the series is over. So that's just kind of like my one question for them. And then my question here for Toronto is, can Pascal Siakam come close to matching Giannis' production on both ends of the floor? Nobody's going to be exactly like as productive as Giannis. Nobody in the NBA. It's just not. Nobody's like as dominant of a player as he is right now. In NBA history, yes, but the dude dunks like Shaq. He's fast as all hell, and he's an unbelievable defensive player. Like, I mean, what do you do about that? There's literally nothing you can do about that. So when I say match his production, I mean like be a clear number 1 option. And I would say Pascal Siakam will probably be covering Giannis for a decent chunk of the time. I mean, how tall is Pascal Siakam exactly? He's around 6'9". Pascal Siakam. I don't know his exact height. That's why I'm just looking up. Yeah, he's 6'9". So Giannis is like 6'11", 7 feet tall. I mean, there's really nobody there's no exact position to put on him because he's as tall as a center and he's like as quick as a point guard. So obviously we're not going to sit here and talk about Giannis the entire time, but if Pascal Siakam can, put up close to like what he's been averaging like per game in the regular season, which is like 23.5 points, 7.5 boards, 3.5 assists, stuff like that. I think it's going to give the Raptors a much better chance in this series to, kind of go on and do what they did last year and end up ultimately beating, the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. So it is time for my prediction here, and these tend to get a little bit controversial. If you guys listen to episode 2, I did have a buddy of mine on, and we actually debated for a long time about one of the Eastern Conference semifinals matches, and that was between the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics. I had the Raptors winning. He had the Celtics winning. We were both diehard Celtics fans. I think I'm more of a realist, and I'm not gonna, dick ride the Celtics. I guess is just call it what it is, and so. That's another back and forth one, but I made my pick. This is the pick I'm going to be going with. I just felt if I'm not going to change my pick just based off of what he thinks. I mean, if we sit here and have a good debate with somebody else, that's a whole nother case. But it was just kind of a lot of slurring back and forth, stuff like that. So I ended up for my conclusion, this one is a great rematch of the 2019 Eastern Conference Finals, but ultimately Giannis' time, and he and the Bucks do end up winning in 6. So. That's my pick. I'm assuming a lot of people are probably going to agree with me on that one. I don't really think there's too much controversy on that one. I think 6 games seems like a fair amount of time. I mean, I don't think that Giannis and the Bucks are going to come in and just absolutely steamroll the Toronto Raptors. I mean, I don't think that's going to be the case at all. I mean, Toronto's been such an underrated team this year. Me personally, I think I actually ended up ranking them like it was somewhere between 5 and 7 in my preseason predictions because I just straight up thought they were going to be like nothing without Kawhi. And boy, have I been wrong, and I will eat that one till the day I die. But yeah, I think the Bucks are going to get by them in 6. Could I be wrong? Obviously, it's just my opinion. But now it is time to move on to the West. So I guess the one change from, doing this the old way without a face cam to now doing it with a face cam is if you guys want the face cam, it's not going to, flow. It's not going to be one take. I'm kind of going to cut because when I'm on, I can't just sit here for an hour and not, drink any water or like check anything on my phone or anything like that. Like we're in the middle of a crisis and we have breaking NBA news pretty much all the time. I mean, Shams just tweeted out, Adam Silver hopes to have a decision regarding the NBA season in 2 to 4 weeks, which would be crazy, which would be huge. I mean, I'm hoping it doesn't get canceled, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So maybe we'll get into that one a little bit more, after these predictions are done and, after some further questions. But we move on to the West now. Lakers and the Clippers, which is going to be such a crazy series if it does happen, and I think it probably will. LeBron and Anthony Davis against Kawhi and Paul George. I mean, what else can you want, in the world? That's like the best series, in my opinion. I just don't think there's any topping that. Every single game in the Staples Center going to be going absolutely crazy. But we do have to get into, predictions here and stuff like that. I can't just sit here and fanboy about it for a while. So, yeah, 1-seeded Lakers, 2-seeded Clippers. Key players, again, they don't change. So if you guys know who they are, maybe you can skip 15 seconds. LeBron James, 25.5 points, almost 8 boards, 10.5 assists. And Kawhi Leonard, 27 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. So kind of goes without saying. I think it's the obvious best player on both sides. I mean, Kawhi Leonard's obviously a better player than Paul George. I'm not even going to sit here and discuss that one. And then LeBron and AD, Anthony Davis is definitely the best big man in the NBA. I still think LeBron's better than him. I don't really think there's much arguing that. LeBron is the MVP of the Lakers. He's probably a top 2 MVP candidate. I don't know if it's him or Giannis. That's, again, not today's podcast discussion. And I hate getting off track in these because once I get off track, I get off track for a while. So key questions for the series are, can Anthony Davis become the number 1 option if Kawhi takes away LeBron? Obviously, the entirety before this year of Anthony Davis's career was in New Orleans while he was the number 1 option. That really doesn't, come up for discussion. He was without a doubt the number 1 option his entire time in New Orleans. And if we look at the situation that's possibly going to happen in this series, is Kawhi Leonard, what he does best is take away the other team's best player. And he's done that time in and time again. I mean, he did it against the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. And was that in 5 or 6 games? I think it was 6, but I'm not positive on that one exactly. I just want to double check on that one. Yeah, it was in 6 games, and I'm not saying he limited. I'm not saying he completely shut down Giannis, but he limited him a little bit, and that little bit pushed them over the top and helped them win. And so, if Kawhi Leonard ends up doing that same thing right here with LeBron James, I think this series, it kind of becomes anyone's ball game. And I think a lot of people will probably pick the Lakers going into this one. And if Kawhi can end up limiting LeBron James and Anthony Davis, does what he did in New Orleans, and I'm obviously not saying it's the same exact situation. The surrounding core and the environment is totally, totally different. But Anthony Davis, to be totally quite frank with you, has not proved anything as a number 1 option. He has not done anything alone. And there's not a lot of people in the NBA that do that. Nobody single-handedly brings a team to an NBA Finals alone. There's obviously a lot of help, but Anthony Davis has not done much as a number 1 option. I'm just going to say it. I mean, there's not really any arguing about it. I'm not saying he's not one of the best players in the league. I'm not saying he's not the best big man in the league, but as a number 1 option, he's done absolutely nothing. I mean, what has he done? I can't think of a single thing that he's legitimately done that is that important as the number 1 option. And obviously, the rest of his time is in New Orleans. New Orleans is such a shit show of a franchise to start with. I mean, that team just could not ever get him any help. And I feel bad for the dude because he got probably a lot of criticism that he didn't deserve because that front office is delusional. They're totally delusional. But if this is the case, and obviously, when I say Kawhi Leonard limits LeBron James, when I say limit, I don't think people are going to interpret that right. I mean, I'm not saying LeBron's going to put up 8 points, 5 rebounds and 6 assists. I'm not saying he's going to turn into Draymond Green all of a sudden, but he's still going to obviously be effective, 20 plus points per game. But Kawhi does this better than anybody in the entire NBA, in my opinion. He limits the other team's best player. And if he does that and Anthony Davis has to become the number 1 option, can Anthony Davis go out there and prove that he can still win as a number 1 option? So that's, my question here. My answer is going to be yes, because I think just the situation is so big for him, and it's obviously never been a situation that he's been in before. It's never a situation that he's been in before. So I think his time comes. I think he shines. I think the rest of the core of the Lakers ends up shining around him, and I think, he ultimately does, prove he can be a number 1 option. So moving in to the key question here for the Los Angeles Clippers, do Kawhi and Paul George prove that they're the best 1-2 punch in the NBA? If we look at some of the other ones, LeBron and Anthony Davis, Stephen Clay, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Kevin Durant and Kyrie. I threw KD and Kyrie on there because, obviously when they're both healthy, it's going to be a huge debate of who the best 1-2 punch is. Obviously, we haven't seen them together once this season. We don't know how they're going to play together. Kyrie Irving's a Robin. He's not a Batman. I think that's, been decided in the NBA. But in my opinion, if Kawhi and Paul George can pull this off, they're the best 1-2 punch in the NBA. I mean, it obviously puts them ahead of LeBron and Anthony Davis if they go out and beat them in 6, 7, however many games it is. And then, I mean, who else are they competing with? I mean, Steph and Clay, like, obviously, you know, they've proved a lot. They've won a championship together before Kevin Durant came there, but obviously, you know, Kevin Durant was on a huge, probably the biggest piece of those Warriors championships. And now that he's gone, can Steph and Clay, you know, get it again or get it together again, you know, make another championship run? That Warriors team's going to be scary with the top 3 pick, but that's, again, different discussion. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, I don't know. Two MVPs, but, like, what have they done besides that? And I'm not saying an MVP award isn't nothing. It's obviously, you know, a huge thing. But, like, what else? Like, seriously. Like, neither of them have proved at all that they can win a championship. So, I think that Kawhi and Paul George go ahead of them, and Kevin Durant and Kyrie obviously have both won a championship. Obviously, both have been huge for their championship teams. Kyrie Irving, obviously, that shot against the Warriors in Game 7 of, I believe, the 2016 NBA Finals to, you know, kind of seal the game for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's one of the most clutch shots in NBA history. And then Kevin Durant, I mean, you look at what he's done for the Warriors for his tenure there, and it's just unbelievable. There's no arguing that he was the best player on the court the entire time. So that's my opinion. If, you know, I think if they do beat LeBron and Anthony Davis here, I think that does put them as the best duo in the NBA. That's just, again, my opinion. But obviously, you know, I can't just sit here and think about hypotheticals. I mean, I'm going into another hypothetical, but I got to give an opinion on who I think is going to win the series. So I kind of wrote down for this one of the most star-studded series ever at the Staples Center, in which LeBron and AD prove they're the best 1-2 punch, best duo, whatever you want to call it, in the NBA, and put them past the Clippers in 7 games. So I know I'm going to get a lot of controversy for that one. I know a lot of people are going to be like, are you kidding me, dude? You're welcome. You're entitled to your opinion. It is what it is. You're always welcome to message me on Twitter at Massa_YT. We can have a full-blown discussion about it in my DMs. I respond to a lot of DMs about a lot of stupid stuff, and I'm sure, you know, you could be next. So that is that. We look at the next round now. It's the Los Angeles Lakers and the Milwaukee Bucks. Again, just my opinion. That will be in episode 4. Also, I want to apologize. This one came out so late. I got so caught up in, if you guys are listening, somehow found me on Spotify and don't know what I do, you know, besides podcasts, I do YouTube basically full time, and I've over the past like couple days, I think I've done like 3. We call them rebuild battles, where basically we see who can get like the most 90s on a team and stuff like that. And I did that with other YouTubers, and obviously those have to be uploaded at a very certain time. So I didn't put off the podcast, but I just kind of delayed it. So I'm not stopping the podcast. I actually had a couple people DM me and say, "Are you done with the podcast?" No, I'm not. Just because I'm a couple days late doesn't mean it's done. So that is that. Those are my NBA Finals, Eastern and Western Conference semifinals prediction. Next episode will be my NBA Finals predictions. But let's move on to some questions now. So if you guys don't know how I typically, you know, do like the question section of this, is I just kind of answer your questions. These all come from you guys. I don't come up with these on my own. So if you guys do have any questions, again, shoot me a Twitter DM. I'd be happy to put it in the next podcast. I don't really get a ton of these questions, so I kind of just pick out whichever ones I see. And honestly, I got some really good questions this week, and you can also comment it right below this video, and I will most likely be featuring you in the next video if you have any questions. So let's get into them. If I can remember to, you know, screenshot it and put it on the screen, I would be happy to do that. There's a very high chance I forget to do that because I have to edit this video technically twice, because when I upload it to, you know, streaming services that aren't YouTube, I can't obviously, you know, have a video file, which is what you are seeing right now. And so I just have to edit it twice. It can't take like video and just take the audio out. I don't know why. It should totally be able to, but yeah, I just have to edit this twice. So if you don't see the screenshot, I promise you I got these questions. I don't just make random questions. That would be kind of sad. But I tend to do 2 general questions and then 2 questions regarding the NBA, or just things kind of related to basketball and stuff like that. We actually are 2 general questions today, which I'm going to get into first, because obviously we just talked a lot of basketball, and this is a very basketball-focused podcast, but I do, you know, people like to ask questions, you know, about me in general, and that's surprising that anybody actually thinks I'm interesting, but they do. So first one here comes from Malcolm on Twitter, and he specifically asked not to, you know, share his last name. So it's from Malcolm. Malcolm, if you're listening, I hope I didn't give away too much information, but he said he has a question regarding YouTube. Both of these general questions are regarding YouTube, and he said, I have a question regarding YouTube. I've recently started a rebuild channel, and my question is, what is the best way you respond to criticism? Okay. So I think this is definitely a fair question, because, you know, everybody as a content creator, no matter what you're doing, YouTube, podcasts, TikToks, I guess, Jesus Christ, that's a disgusting thought. Whatever you may be doing as a content creator, there's obviously going to be criticism. You can't please everybody. It's kind of how this world works. And there's going to be no point in time where every single person is going to agree with everything you say. No single person is going to like everything that you do. And I think that's like kind of the biggest thing that you kind of have to understand when you're kind of easing into this. And so I think the best way I, respond to criticism or like haters, I guess, if you even want to call them, is, it depends, it all depends how you go about it. If I look at one of my recent videos and I see a comment in all capital letters, somebody just screaming at me, and they write like 4 paragraphs, am I going to read all of it? Probably, because I want to know, first of all, what they're so mad about. Second of all, like, what in the world? Why? Relax. Like, I think my favorite thing is when people go on and on and on and just comment and comment and comment, thinking like the more comments they leave, the more likely I am to reply to them. And it's just not the case. And don't get me wrong, I love interacting with you guys, but when I'm getting screamed at, I'm not going to do it. You cannot solve stupidity on some people, but good criticism is definitely a good thing. When I was starting out YouTube, obviously, we actually might be at 28,000 subscribers by the time you guys see this, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. And obviously, looking to start up this podcast maturely, it's not the right word. Eventually, getting it strictly onto streaming services, which it is, but eventually getting it off YouTube and just strictly doing videos. But I think the biggest thing, when I was first starting, I listened to what people had to actually say, because nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect at all at what they're doing. And you make mistakes, and you definitely, fall on your ass a few times. And I think the hardest thing for me when I was like first starting was like, I would sit down, I'd be sitting there with like a couple hundred subs at the most, like thinking, and I thought I would drop a banger. I thought I would drop an absolute banger, and I would just go on, and it would get like no views, which is fair enough. People with a couple hundred subscribers, you're not going to get a lot of views typically, unless you pull out a golden ticket out of a Willy Wonka chocolate bar. Like, it's just not going to happen. And so when I was sitting there and I've been like just thinking, I'm like, God damn it, this sucks. Like, this sucks. And then I have people in my comment section nonetheless saying, you don't know what you're talking about. What the hell are you doing? And I'm just like, oh, brother. So I think the biggest thing I learned was to take their criticism in a good way. And kind of understand why they were commenting what they were. And I think even when I was just talking about this, even with some those messages where people are like screaming, I put screaming lightly because it's most of the time it's a 14-year-old behind an iPad, and they try to act a lot tougher than they actually are. But when I look at these comments, I think the biggest thing is like understand what message that it is that they're trying to say, and then look at that from there, and then if they actually have a good message, then maybe talk to them a little bit. But if they're just sitting there screaming at you, telling you that you have no idea what you're doing after, you've been doing it for years on years, then that's when I just tend to ignore it. I have people, sometimes who DM me on Twitter saying, quit YouTube. And I'm like, you can just stop watching. Even the other day when I did a collaboration with 6 Rings of Steel, obviously, it was just like a fun thing. There's no harm intent. And I get it. Not everybody's going to like you. And this is one of the things, but I saw a comment on his video that basically kind of said they were talking about me. And it's like, cause somebody was asking, for us to do like the ultimate rebuild battle with like all the YouTubers that do rebuilds. And somebody asked, and it was like, oh, can you do this? And then somebody's like, well, don't include Massa. Like, he doesn't appreciate his subscribers. And I was like, what in the world? He's like, he's so disrespectful. And I'm like, what? First of all, give me one example when I haven't been diehard appreciative for every single person that watches my videos, no matter who you are. I don't care what you comment. I don't care if you hate the video, whatever it is. I am diehard appreciative that you took the time out of your day to sit down and watch me for as long as you did. It can be for 5 seconds. It can be the entire video, anywhere in between. I don't really care. I appreciate you more than you can probably ever know, because this YouTube, it's a great hobby. It's turned into a job for me, which is great. I don't do this for money. If I, was strictly doing this for money, I'm sure I would not be making rebuilds because they're not the most popular thing on 2K. And so that's my thing. And it's just like, you can respond to criticism anything you want, but I think taking it in stride and kind of understanding why you're receiving it is kind of the best thing to do. So when people say things that aren't really backed up, that's when I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to ignore this, because at the end of the day, they're the one commenting on my video. I'm not the one talking to them. So it is what it is. I obviously, appreciate every single comment. I would never, try to degrade somebody. I love every single one of my subscribers. Let's move on to another question. So question number 2 here is just another kind of the general one. It's actually about YouTube. So as I mentioned, 2 about YouTube today. And I apologize. I keep cutting out, and it's because I get thirsty. And that sounded so ingenuine, but that actually is the reason I'm cutting out. And again, I know a podcast, I guess you can cut out in a podcast, but I think it's a lot better when you do it in one take. But you want face cam, you're going to have to deal with it. I'm kidding. It's a total joke. But this question was, actually, I didn't even put whose name it was. Just wrote it down. Well, that's awesome. At least I wrote it's from YouTube. That's cool. It's who are some other YouTubers you would like to collab with? And I think he probably means by collab, just do like a rebuild battle against something like that, because there's really no other way. Whoa, I'm not cutting that out. There's really no other way that like YouTubers like what I do technically collab. So let me think. I think, you know, the ones I've done so far in my YouTube career, 6 Rings a bunch of times. I think I've probably done with him the most. We've had some really good like videos together, or not together, but like some really good like rebuild battles. I think our original, like our OG ones back in like 2K17, 2K18 were like without a doubt the best. Nowadays they're kind of the same thing over and over, but then again every rebuild is the same thing over and over. Crushable's obviously a ton. Crushable's is like my go-to guy. Without a doubt, I would not be gaining as much many subscribers or anything without him. He makes my thumbnails, for those of you who don't know. Super high quality content on his channel as well. I definitely recommend going to watch him. And so Crushables, TK I just did, TKE, sorry, he's an up-and-coming YouTuber. Who are some other ones? I definitely have more. I'm trying to think. Crushables, 6 Rings, TKE. I'm trying to, like, I know for a fact I've done more. How am I forgetting? Okay, I know for a fact there's one other one that I'm seriously forgetting, and it's like a pretty big one. I just straight up cannot remember. So, well, that's, I guess, who I've done with. Who would I like to do? Well, first of all, the number one thing I'd like to do would be try to get like all the big rebuilders together and like rebuild the same team and have all of us put it out. It's like kind of like the ultimate rebuild battle. I don't think we would have I mean, we probably would, but I don't think we'd really count it. Like when the big thing is when you put like a straw poll in like the description, when you do like a collab and like you have people vote on it, typically people just vote for whoever they like more, which is kind of sad, but like that's the internet, I guess, for you. So we probably wouldn't do that, but ultimately, if I could, it would be me, 6 Rings, Crushables, King of the Fourth Quarter, Crispy Flakes, maybe Legendary EA. I know he's been doing a lot of just like series and stuff like that. I don't know if he straight up does rebuilds. I know he used to a little bit. I'd like to collab with him in general if he did want to do that. I'm trying to think, who are some other ones? Goonigan, maybe, if he wanted to hop in there. I don't watch his videos a ton, but I probably should. He's really good at what he does because I've seen a few of them. I don't really know any other ones, but yeah, those are the guys I would love to. Obviously, if we can get all of us together, that would be super, super cool. And I'm sure I'm probably forgetting somebody. So if you want to let me know who that is, feel free to let me know down below in the comment section. But yeah, to end this one, it's going to be kind of a shorter video today. We got 2 just general NBA questions. This one comes from Mike Watkins on Twitter, and it is, who will have a better overall career, Pascal Siakam or Jason Tatum? This is like not the first time I've seen this question either, which is, it's like fair because like I guess they kind of both just broke out as number 1 options on their teams. They're both like a very similar age, I think. So Pascal Siakam, I'll go over their stats in the most recent season: 23.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Jason Tatum, 23.5 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. So, I mean, from a number standpoint, they're averaging exactly the same amount of points per game. Siakam has 0.4 more rebounds, and Siakam also has 0.7 more assists. I don't know. You also have to keep in mind that the second best player on the Celtics is better than the second best player on the Raptors. I would say probably Kemba Walker versus, I don't know, who's the second best player on the Raptors? Like, who is it? Kyle Lowry probably. I would say probably better than Kyle Lowry, Kemba Walker is, and then third player like Fred VanVleet or like Jaylen Brown. Like, that's just my thing. Like, there's a lot of better players in the Celtics, but I think the Raptors have a much deeper team. But that's not the question today. The diehard Celtics fan in me is going to say Jason Tatum. That's going to be my answer, but I don't know. I just kind of like Tatum's style a little more. I mean, obviously the NBA is not getting bigger; it's getting smaller. And Pascal Siakam is not like a I don't know, like a cutout big man. Like, obviously he's a stretch the floor kind of big. He's a really good shooter. I just think Jason Tatum's style, like, he plays a lot of ISO ball, which is good. You need a lot of ISO ball today in the NBA. So my pick's going to be Jason Tatum. Again, we don't really have any facts that can prove who's going to be a better player in the future. It's kind of just a guessing game. I'm going to pick Tatum, though. And then we hop into our final question here. Out of the series that you predicted, which will be the most fun to watch? This one comes from Christian. I'm assuming it's probably on YouTube because I just didn't write I don't know why I felt the need to not write the name of the person who asked me my second question and then where this question from Christian came from. So if either of you are watching these, I apologize that one, I didn't give you your name. Two, I didn't tell you where the question came from. So I apologize on that one. And then the question is, out of the series that you predicted, which one will be the most fun to watch? And I have this one kind of down with a bullet. It's going to be the Lakers and the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. Kind of goes without saying. Like, that is going to be such an energized series, and it's going to be so fun. Like, all of Los Angeles is going to have a field day with that. And obviously, you know, if we ever do get the series back, I think Los Angeles went into an extra 3-month extended lockdown, so it probably won't be played in LA, so it obviously wouldn't have been, you know, what we once hoped, but maybe if it happens next year or something like that. So that's my pick for that. A close second would be the NBA Finals, obviously, with the Bucks and the Lakers. So kind of wraps up episode 3 here of Behind the Basket. I think this one's short. It's probably going to be close to, if not under, a half an hour, and I actually don't mind that. It's probably going to do a little bit better like length of time people listen to. So yeah, I appreciate it. If you guys have any other podcast topics, next episode will be me predicting the NBA Finals, and then after that, we have nothing. After that, I do have a guest I'm bringing onto the podcast, and so if you guys have any topics you want us to talk about, if not, I can obviously come up with something myself. If you guys have any questions you want me to answer on the next podcast, or maybe one after that, make sure to leave them down below in the comment section. Other than that, I hope you guys seriously did enjoy listening, and then probably in the next episode will probably be, maybe I'll do the one with the guest on YouTube as well, but after that, it'll probably be the last ones on YouTube, and it'll strictly go to Spotify. So if you guys keep wanting to listen, make sure to, you know, follow me on Twitter. I'll obviously announce when they are coming out. So once again, thank you guys so much for listening and watching, and I should have a rebuild out tomorrow. I'll see you guys all there. Thanks so much.